If you guys saw my little video promo this week, I am just amazed at some of the random verses that exist in Proverbs. And that one had to do with soda and vinegar. It's pretty cool. But Proverbs 12. The state of Colorado has some incredible rapids. There was a summer that I was able to go about 4 times down a series of rapids. So this is me right there. That's the rapids. That's one of the trips of that summer. Now the rapids, they have levels to identify them, and so there's level 1 rapids, which are described as waves that tug at your boat, a fun, relaxing way to spend the day. So like a lazy river, okay? Level 3, for example, is classified as waves up to 4 feet and narrow passageways that send the boat shimmying and water gushing over the side. Plenty of excitement. This is your normal rapids trip. This is where youth groups generally take their groups and their high schoolers to a trip. As high as it gets is a level 3. That's normal there. There's level 4s, which is long, difficult rapids, narrow passageways, turbulent water that requires precise maneuvering and sends hearts racing. And then there's a level 5, and this one was a level 5 trip. This had them up to level 5 here. We go through a portion called the Royal Gorge. And this is all of the above and then some, with large, complex, gushing rapids, twisting and spinning to deliver the consummate adrenaline rush. And you really get an adrenaline rush when you lose your guide on your trip. And you're just paddling and you're not hearing any instructions, and you look back and you have one of your guys hanging over the boat, bringing the guide in while another guy is holding on to the feet, while the guide is yelling instructions at us going down the thing. Not that has happened to me. Oh boy. Adrenaline pumping is what it is. So much fun. I love it. But the book of Proverbs says this about our speech, though. It says, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. And we'll get to that verse here soon, but my question for you is your speech a bubbling brook, or is it a raging rapid? Our speech should not be an adrenaline pumping, in your face style. It should actually be more qualified as a gentle wave that tugs at your boat. A fun, relaxing way to spend the day. A bubbling brook. Now, if you have managed to read through the book of Proverbs, which if you have not, please do and get back on it, you've probably encountered quite a few verses that talk about our speech and how we're to speak to one another and various things like that. What we're supposed to say, how we're supposed to do it, things like that. See, the biggest passages are in Proverbs chapter 12, Proverbs chapter 15, which we're going to be studying in a community group this week, Proverbs 18, as well as Proverbs chapter 25, with verses spread everywhere else. And so this morning, we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 12 and Proverbs chapter 18 and see what the writers in the book here of Proverbs say about our speech. So we're in Proverbs chapter 12 and look at verse 17. Now, if you look here, verse 17 begins, if you look at verse 17, it says, whoever speaks the truth. And verse 19 says truthful lips. Verse 20 talks about deceit. Verse 22 talks about lying, and also that's deceit. And Yeah. So right off the bat, you have this block of verses. The writer here specifically is focusing on that of truth, that is how you are to speak needs to be of truth and not being deceitful. And so our first point here is what this is being communicated. Speak the truth by living truth. Let's keep going, all right? So here we are. So this is what's fun. So as I read this, I want you to, travel with me here, okay? So verse 17 says, whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence. So what is the proof that one is speaking truthfully? What is it? Evidence. People who speak truth have evidence for why they believe and what they are saying. Honest, truthful evidence. Okay, now let's keep going here. Look at verses 18 and 19 as he keeps saying. He says, there is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts. Remember that raging rapid? That's sort of the idea here, okay? But the tongue of the wise brings healing. If you've ever been to an amusement park, where do all the adults like to spend their time? It's the lazy river. They just lay there and just float around. It's soothing up until the fact the kid jumps on you. Okay? But for the most part, it is a healing time. They said here in verse 19, truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. And so what is more proof that someone is telling the truth? Verse 19 says it endures forever. What also does it say about the truth in verse 18? The tongue of the wise, which has been directly attached to that of the truth, brings healing. Now, I want you to think today, and it's nothing new, but how is truth generally delivered to people? Like a sword thrust. I want you to think about it. See, because the writer here is not just saying, be truthful no matter what happens. Who's ever under you, well, that's just what they needed to hear. What? Yeah. The bloodier the mess, the righter it is. Exactly, because that's really how truth is handled nowadays. Because it's not just about the truth, it's also about being right. And it's about being right and making sure no one around that wrong person can ever question you again. We slice and slaughter one another with our version of the truth. And it's why first point is speak truth by living truth. How the writer here is shaping speaking truth is not one of sword thrusts, not one of slicing and slaughtering and killing one another, but truth, speaking the truth, has to be delivered in a way that brings healing. It is calming. It sort of shapes and changes how we approach it. I mean, anybody who has spent any time on social media knows everyone loves to just proclaim and rip apart anybody who doesn't agree with them. Anybody in any normal conversation can usually find someone ripping into someone else for a viewpoint they have. The writer here says that's not how you talk truth. That's not how you do it. The tongue of the wise brings about healing, not damaging them. And it sort of changes so how does this impact our truth here? Well, it makes you slow down a little bit. Yeah, you might be right, but can I deliver it in a way that it brings healing, or am I just going to slice and dice them? But he's not done here. See, look at verse 20. See, he says, deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil, but those who plan peace have joy. And I define it as this. Here's more proof of it. But look at verse 20. it says, deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil. So not truth, okay, is generally a thing of evil. But I said, but those who plan peace have joy. And I thought this was a fascinating way to also sort of bracket and define the goal of what truth is. Truth ultimately should bring joy. See, it's like, for example, when you share the gospel with someone, you can spend all their time and make sure that they have been sliced and diced by the fact that they are sinners in need of a Savior and they are all going to hell, right? Which is true. All of us, apart from Jesus Christ, are destined to spend eternity away from the Father. But what does the good news do? It's good news. But hey, we're not stuck that way. Jesus Christ, through his work on the cross, brings something good. It brings us hope, peace, joy. The ultimate goal of bringing truth needs to be that of joy and bringing people up. And I want to challenge you, that also includes speaking politics, if you've ever done it. The goal when we share our viewpoints, it should not be the other side are a bunch of idiots. Yeah. Because there's no hope. There's no joy. There's nothing there besides you've just proclaimed everybody dumb. There's no truth. And I say that because both sides do it, crazy peoples. The ultimate goal of truth is that of joy. And he keeps going. He says, verse 21, no ills befall the righteous, but the wicked are filled with trouble. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. Next week, for Father's Day, we are going to study the abominations. For Father's Day. It's going to be awesome. Okay? I think so anyways. I figured that's like so manly. It's just talk about hating things. I love it, okay? That's what we're doing next week. But here he says lying lips. And so if you're tracking with what he's saying, okay, those who are truthful do this and bring healing and joy, etc. And those who are wicked or deceitful, etc. And when those express themselves through their mouth lying lips, God hates. Ugh. But those who act faithfully, in essence, who are telling the truth and living truth and doing what you're supposed to do, they act faithfully are his delight. Hating, delighting. What side do you want to be on? Hate or delight? Delight. Sort of a no-brainer for us. That's it. And I think this is the result of speaking and focusing on the truth, the result of speaking the truth in a loving, healing way brings delight. And you can say, well, isn't that sort of our goal too? Yes, that's how they all blend together, okay? But you're getting it. The idea is to delight the Lord, and it places our speech underneath what the Lord says. We are not gods among ourselves where we can do and say whatever we want. Our speech is accountable before the Lord. That's what's driven here. Okay, is to do and to speak as the Lord says. And this last one here, our next one, verse 23, says, a prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaim folly. Oh man, I have so many sermon illustrations I can use for this. But the act of someone who speaks truthfully and brings healing, and this idea of faith, faithful, delighting the Lord, etc. There's this side here that the writer has created, and ultimately, what's left is someone who is in that camp knows when to keep his mouth shut. That's what it is. It's not reacting or freaking out when someone holds a different viewpoint than you. It's none of that. It's literally just, this is just, when I speak here, it is just going to destroy this person. So I'm not going to. Because it's not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to save it for another time. When I've organized my thoughts, they're not as hostile, they're not as tense. I'm not as tense. It's okay. So you don't broadcast your wisdom. It's keeping our mouth closed. That's the first one, is speaking truth comes from this aspect of living truthfully. It's not just content, but it's also how we do it. See, James says this in James chapter 3, verse 6. He says that the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. James is like, when we open our mouth, it is a weapon for terrible things. That's what he says here. The heart of fools proclaims folly. Folly is dangerous to other people. And then Jesus says in Luke chapter 6, verse 45, the good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil, for out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. So I will challenge you, and this is going to drop like a bomb, but there is hope. If you cannot keep your mouth closed, and you have this constant desire to constantly share your opinion on social media, through shares, and diatribes, or whatever you like to do, that reveals our heart. And I say that because pretty much 90% of everybody is involved in social media of some kind. It's the easy one to pick, but it's the one where we majority of the times get ourselves in the most trouble. And I'm probably going to get blocked here, but I follow most of you. I get to see all the stuff. All the nonsense, literally. So you guys are all going to block me now. That's fine. But we are joining the fools when we are using those and acting foolishly. It says in James chapter 3, but wisdom from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. That is the hope. If you focus on making peace, there is a harvest of righteousness that is able to blossom when you are one who sows peace with your speech. Rhymed. I'm not even going to spend the time on this very comical illustration I found. If you guys want to talk to me after, oh man, like I said, I have so many sermon illustrations, but let's keep going. Let's turn to chapter 18 now, okay? Chapter 18, here's the next one about speech, and track what he's saying here. So chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. And this next one is pretty much, there's the bullets. That was totally my sermon illustration, but we don't have time. It's so funny. Okay. I'll save it for another time. All right. Now, so we've already seen how important it is that not only are we right in what we say, but it's also very important in how we present the right, okay? But let's see what he's saying here in chapter 18, verse 1. So, and this I define it as, I jumped in, but speak wisely by being wise, okay? Just like being, truthful by being truthful. Yeah, pretty much I didn't know how to say them. All right, so whoever isolates himself, in verse 1, seeks his own desire, he breaks out against all sound judgment. Okay, so this first question we have for you, and how can you begin to speak truthfully, which is directly attached to your wisdom, is this question here. Do you have a variety of sources to get information from? Or is it just Rush Limbaugh? I hope not. He's one example, okay? We can find a number. But that's the question. Do you have a variety of sources where you're getting your information from? See, that's what he's saying here. So somebody who speaks wisely does not isolate himself and his own opinion. But he's able to listen to other sides. That's what we got to do. We got to be open to it. And it's really scary because then we're afraid we might be wrong. Exactly. But that's a scary thing. Because it's scary being wrong. Because we want to be right. But maybe we're wrong. So there's an attitude there behind it. But that first question you want to ask yourself before you speak, and this is really good. This is a good lesson. So before you share, do you have a variety of sources to get your information? For example, I was told when I was a kid that Mr. Rogers used to be in Navy SEALs. Okay? See, and isn't it awesome that Mr. Rogers, a Navy SEAL who went into Nam and murdered half a village of evil people, that now he teaches kids about love and kindness and gentleness. And he used to think that was really a big deal. And then you find out that Mr. Rogers is not a Navy SEAL, nor has he ever been a Navy SEAL or in the military. And you're like, oh, he actually practices what he preaches and doesn't go off and he thinks everybody can get along. So if you thought today that Mr. Rogers was the Navy SEALs, I'm sorry, he was not. He was not in the Black Ops program. I'm sorry for bursting your bubble. But that's it. You just got to get a variety of information. That's something that I used to believe because somebody once told me that. See, because look at verse 2. It says, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. This guy needs to simmer down because he's stepping on way too many toes here. So that's my next thing. My next question for you is, do you just express your opinion? Are you able to listen and keep your mouth closed when someone has a viewpoint that's completely different than yours, is trying to talk to you about his viewpoint? Exactly. So that's the question. Are you known for just expressing your opinion? Because he says here in verse 3, when wickedness comes, contempt comes also, and with dishonor comes disgrace. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. This is our third question. The point of our thing. Are you a bubbling brook or are you a raging rapid? Whew. Because, if you notice here, he says, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. I think he's really pointing to the fact that there is, just like we said in James and what Jesus said is that out of the, our hearts, our mouth speaks. Our hearts are incredibly deep. And so what is coming to the surface? And if it's the raging rapid, I give you a hint. It might not be truth. You might want to be careful and watch it and go and make sure it bubbles to the top instead of bleh, out. So are you a bubbling brook or raging rapid? The question in verse 5, it is not good to be partial to the wicked or to deprive the righteous of justice. Whew. Now this one's a hard one to say because you might really think that everything you say is righteous, okay? Most of us function and live in a way that we think what we're doing is right. Right? I can be honest there. We act and say what we think is right, even if it's wrong, but when I say it in that moment, I pretty much think that this is the right thing to do. And then sometimes later I'm like, yeah, that was definitely not the right thing to do. I wish I'd not said it. And so we generally function this way. But there's this idea here where he gives this sort of idea that we're supposed to be simple and kind and be careful when we present. And I really like 5 because it helps us, I believe, think through some things. When we speak, are we, has to be partial to the wicked. Are we, and I'm going to say selfishness is an aspect of wicked living. Are we seeking the good of other people when we speak? Or are we just seeking to make sure everyone knows that I am right? Because so often I guess I would really like a church, and I wish Christianity would get much louder about speaking for justice instead of keeping our mouths closed. And and so I'm going to step off the pastor box here in a second, I guess. But I have encountered too many pastors who believe that it is better to not speak on behalf of people because that is a social issue. That is a social problem. And the church has nothing to do with social problems. But Christianity is social because we're social. It doesn't not affect anything we're doing. The problem is that makes it really messy. It's really easy to say, no, the world just has its problems. But it's a lot different if we as Christians step into it and say, hey, let's see if we can figure out how to make this work. You know, like when there's accusations, whether they are right or not, of racism, instead of running from it, we're like, I don't understand. And we step into it, and we learn, and we listen, and we're actually helping people get along with each other. It'd be awesome. What's another? I don't know. You can just go down any number of issues. We run from them instead of lean into them. And it'd be really fun to actually speak justice for those who are right and be involved in that, instead of keeping our mouth closed and letting the wicked keep doing the wicked stuff. And if you think I'm wrong, I would really encourage you to read the book of James, who has no problem throwing rich people under the bus. It is brutal. And he was a pastor. Whew. Yeah. But let's keep going there, okay? It says, a fool's lips, in verse 6, walks into a fight. Okay? And his mouth invites a beating. Whoa! Okay there. Have you ever wanted to beat somebody up for what he said? Yup. I did. Confession time, 9th grade. This guy made fun of me over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I turned to him and I said, dude, stop. He's like, dude, stop. Boom. It was before I was saved, but I popped him. So much so that he didn't show up for school for a few days. Then he apologized to me, and I apologized to him, and then we were friends. That's how guys work it out. But has it happened where it just bubbles inside you? Come on, let's be honest. Seriously, guys, let's be honest, okay? It bubbles. Whew, a wise person does not need to, that's not his thing. His speech should not be inviting a beating, okay? Yeah, man. You guys probably want to beat me up sometime from the pulpit. My bad. All right, I'm sorry, but like it's just like, but is that how we're characteristic? Are we that guy who, man, I just wish he would stop talking? Do they make people muzzles? Let's work now, okay? All right, I don't know. I mean, but that's exactly it. Is this how you're known for? Is this what you're known for, all right? So that's the question. Will what you say start a fight? It's a good thing. Because I like this verse. We should just make it a theme verse. A fool's lips walks into a fight, but his mouth invites a beating. See, because he says in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 8, see, remember we said there is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. If someone tries to stab you, what are you going to do in response? You're not just going to stand there, are you? You are going to fight back. That is how our speech needs to be. Like, is this person getting defensive? If they are, hey, maybe I'm coming at them a little too strong. I will back up, and I will drop my knives, and I will smile. Because he says in verse 7 here, it says, a fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul. The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. Is what you are saying bitter, or is it sweet? Because the wise of heart is called discerning. This says in Proverbs 16:21, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. He is saying, if you want your words to be accepted, then make them a delicious piece. Oh, filet mignon that has been, oh man, I want to grill now. What is it? Is it going to be a piece of steak? Or is it a big gulp of apple cider vinegar? Talked with somebody about that this morning and just, yeah. So what is it like? Steak, other stuff, green peas. What are they like? Does it go down easily or not? So these are the questions. Is what you're about to say. And I would say, if you guys have anything to say to me, and if people feel, and I'm pretty good at taking it. I'm pretty good at taking the verbal vomit. But if people feel like they are able to yell at me for 15 and 20 minutes as their pastor, I really wonder how things are at home, how things are in the community, because it's not okay. It's not. God calls us as Christians to speak better. And he tells here the future leaders of Israel need to learn to speak better. And if you can't, then it's better for you not to speak. And so it's a high challenge, it's a high calling. But I think we can do it with the help of God. So let our speech not be a level 5 rapid, but a level 1 rapid that is pleasant. See, if you notice, the water gets to the exact same place, doesn't it? Level 5 can kill people. Level 1, pretty sure a baby can go down on it. It all gets to the same place. It just takes a little longer. But it's worth it. Because you can drink out of a level 1 river. You try to drink out of a level 5, you die. Your head gets taken off. So the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. Let's speak truth. Let's speak